Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Savings by the Cup. On today's video, I am going to be budgeting one of my paychecks with you as a 27-year-old girl that works in an administrative position. As you've maybe heard in some of my previous videos, currently my husband and I are primarily living the majority off of my income, and so I just wanted to show you guys how I budget our check today. So anyways, if you're interested in this type of content, feel free to continue watching. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. I am currently trying to work on making sure that you guys can see what I'm writing a bit better, so hopefully this angle works, but if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. So the check that I'm going to be budgeting today is the check that came in on the 16th of January, which is just this last Friday. So let's go ahead and write that down. It's the 1/16 check. You guys can see that. And this paycheck, normally when I budget for it, I budget the bare minimum hours that I work, which currently for me ends up being, let me double check, when I work the minimum amount of hours, I usually end up getting paid about $1,464.11, so that's what my estimate usually is. So I can go ahead and put here estimate is $1,464.11. However, because I did work a few extra hours, this paycheck actually came out to be a little bit more, which obviously we're not going to complain about, but this last paycheck actually ended up being $1,525.62. So as I've explained before, when I created my budget, I budget for the bare minimum, and so I have my bills set up, to where I know exactly what's going to come out of every paycheck, and the money that's left over, that's what we use towards debt. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little section here called bills, and then we're gonna go ahead and put on here how much and then what's left. So right now, currently, we are starting at $1,525.62. Now, given that this paycheck is gonna take the place of my normally what would be my second paycheck, just because I want to make sure all our bills are taken care of before I use that extra paycheck for anything else, the last one that's coming in. Like I said, I'm gonna treat this as if it were the second paycheck that I would normally get every month. So because of that, the first things that I like to take out of there are going to be the gas that I spend every week. As you guys know, I do live in California, so gas is pretty expensive, so I usually budget $100 per paycheck. So we're gonna subtract that, and I am gonna be using my calculator on the side, so you might hear me punching numbers in there, but I'll make sure to show you guys how much it is. So let me see. So $1,525.62 minus 100 is equal to $1,425.62. Now, like I mentioned before, me and my husband also budget spending money for the both of us using the bare minimum. Whatever's left over, we just split it in half. And this money, this spending money, just to clarify, isn't necessarily just for fun stuff. We also use it for any other extra needs that come up, For example, my husband had to buy a few extra things for paramedic school that he's in. He had to buy some new shirts and pants and stuff like that, and so that would come out of this extra spending money, not to mention other miscellaneous things that just come up sometimes throughout the week that aren't necessarily considered groceries. That would also come out of this spending money. So for me, on this paycheck, spending money is going to be $164.36. So now we're also going to subtract that from here. So again, $164.36. That brings our new total to $1,061.26. Now I like to make this section what's left because it allows me to see where my budget is at as I go and how much I have left at the end of the check. So the next thing that we're gonna put on here is groceries. Every week, my husband and I, from every check that we get, we contribute $150 towards groceries. So we're gonna now go ahead and subtract that on here. This budget ends up being about $600 a month that we contribute towards groceries. Obviously this month, since we have an extra paycheck, it's going to be a little bit more, but either way, every paycheck we just give $150 for that. Now this is going to be the big expense for this paycheck. This one's going to take the majority of our budget, and that would be rent. Our rent at the moment is pretty inexpensive for where we live and for the fact that we have a house, but it is typical of a California rent, meaning even though it might be cheap to us, for a lot of people this might be expensive. For us it's $1,000. We think it's a great price, so we're not complaining, but that is going to take the majority of our budget. So let's go ahead and subtract that off of here. Minus 1,000 leaves us only with $111.26. And now the last thing that we're also going to pay for with this paycheck is going to be my cell phone bill, and that comes out to be $60. So let's go ahead and subtract that from here. And so something else that I'd like to mention is that when I was budgeting according to this amount up here, this one right here, I did realize that, you know, I would have to actually need to save a little bit of money from this paycheck for the next one to be able to cover another bill that's going to be coming up when my husband gets paid. And so I'm going to mark down here how much I budgeted that I needed to save. It's not a ton, but I needed to save $10.27 to be able to cover that other expense that's going to be coming up. So let's go ahead and subtract that as well. And that leaves us with an extra $41.26. Now, obviously, guys, this right here is not a lot of money, but that's what we have left this extra paycheck, and it's extra. So what are we going to use this money towards? Normally, depending on how big this figure is, one thing that I would consider is maybe splitting it in two and putting half of it into my savings and putting the other half into, you know, paying it towards debt. However, since this amount is very small, we're just going to go ahead and contribute this to debt. So we're going to go ahead and put credit card payment. We're going to go ahead and subtract that $41.26, and that's going to leave our total at a whopping $0. So as you can tell here, the way that I like to budget is what a lot of people would consider a zero-based budget. What that means is that every dollar has a rule. You don't just leave any extra money without any use. In our case, since we are trying to pay off our debt, that money is going to go towards our debt, but you can go ahead and use that money for whatever you need. If you have an extra expense that came up, obviously that would be a good place to put it towards. Or if you just feel like you need to save it, you can also put it in your savings. But this is how we've decided to use that extra money for this month. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. If you guys have any questions or would like to know how you can also create a budget, feel free to ask any questions below, and I can go ahead and create more videos depending on what you'd like to see. But other than that, thank you so much for budgeting with me today. I hope you continue to join me. I hope to be making these videos a little bit more often. But anyways, I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Have a good one.